Los Angeles
Wow.
County. And we suddenly have this crack cocaine epidemic.
Yeah, everywhere.
And the funding for prevention programs was minuscule
Yeah.
compared to the money that was being made off of this by the CIA,
Yeah.
you know. And I knew nothing about that at the time. And it infuriates me.
Yeah.
When I look back, it just infuriates me, trying to fight against this with this little token amount that the
Yeah.
government hands out for prevention programs.
Right.
You know. Anyway, let's talk about one more thing now. What kind of people do this? See, that came up when you were thinking about what kind of person
Yeah.
can disembowel a dead GI and fill the body up with heroin?
Yeah.
What kind of person is that? And what kind of person is running these operations? And what kind of people do we have running this government? Because that's exactly what it amounts to. And you mentioned something in your book that I had known about previously, but you're the first person I ran into who also knew about it. But there was a group of psychologists in Poland at the end of the Nazi occupation and then into the Soviet occupation under Stalin, who observed very, very psychopathic leadership at the highest levels in these two regimes, and they wrote about it.
Yeah.
And let's see that other book cover. They named it Ponerology.
Yeah, it was political ponerology.
Political Ponerology.
Yeah.
It's there. The author is, has a Polish name, Lobachewski or
Andrew Lobachewski.
Lubachewski, yeah.
And it's about evil.
Yeah.
And evil in high places.
Yeah.
Everybody
the
thinks
science of evil. Is what
the science of evil adjusted for political purposes. That's the subtitle.
Right.
And when I ran across this book, I'm here researching this book, and it's always, why would they do this? Why would they do that? Why would they do this? And I got piles of this evidence and research, and somehow I ran across this book. Red Pill Press put it out in Canada, and all of a sudden we don't have just Silence of the Lamb, Hannibal Lecter type guys that end up in jail. That when these people are born in prosperous, influential families, they don't go to jail, they end up in charge of things, like governments and agencies of governments, and police forces, and high concentration of military, press.
And the reason they end up in high places, they have a competitive advantage. Freud pointed this out a century ago. These are people who are actual psychopaths. They're not sociopaths, which is slightly different. Sociopath is just somebody who behaves antisocially, and it's often because of environmental circumstances and so forth. But a psychopath is somebody who has some parts missing in their personality, and they're parts that seem to be associated with the frontal lobes, where they are lacking the capacity to empathize, and as a result, they have no conscience, and so they don't have the internal restraints that everybody else has. You and I, we have to answer to this internal stuff before we can do something. The psychopath only has the external obstacles. And as a result, they have a distinct competitive advantage. And the smart ones, the people at the top of the normal distribution curve of IQ, within that population, they're permeating the government. They permeate the highest levels of corporations.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And there was an interesting book written by a couple of psychologists a few years ago called Snakes in Suits.
Yeah.
About the psychopaths at the top of corporations.
Was it Robert Hare, or was it another?
I don't recall the names of the authors, but there were two psychologists.
It was the same.
And this book by Lobachewski, there was a group of psychologists in Poland that were just observing, and they were recording the behavior of these leaders and these.
They were actually all over Eastern Europe, and Lobachewski and these guys they had a way of communicating where they didn't know really who the other name was, and they were doing this research so that if one of them got caught and tortured or something, they wouldn't even know the names of the other ones. And when I'm reading this thing, and he goes back into history, all the way back, and shows how these people are take over things, and they're not good leaders, obviously, because they have no sense of human beings or life or anything like that.
They're also very indifferent to consequences.
Yes. And they, I think it was Lobachevsky that said they're like germs that don't realize that they're going to get cremated with the body.
Yeah.
You know, they just can't stop.
Yeah.
And how they have created these empires, these brutal empires that oppress their own people, and eventually they crash because somebody outsmarts them somehow. It's just when your enemy is everybody, and everybody is miserable, they're going to find a way to get you.
Yeah.
And they end up crashing all throughout history. Germany, he went way back, and Poland, the Soviet Union, with Stalin and all this. And I think Stalin, he didn't figure was, he figured he lacked frontal gray matter, that he did not have the capacity to do some things absolutely brutal. Yeah. And these, you can't beat them in a debate because they're right there. You know, they have no restraints. And so these people, they look like they know what they're doing, but they
look decisive.
They only know destruction. That's all they care about, is being able to dominate, control, and kill people and break things. That's all they know how to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all this data that I'd piled up, the answer of why would they, or why did they? Yeah. I could fill in that blank now.
Yeah. And they had put together this book, and the first iteration of it they had to throw in the furnace because the KGB was coming, knocking on the door, so they threw it in the fire. Yeah. They reconstructed it and gave a copy to an American tourist who promised to deliver it to the Vatican, but then they never heard about it again. So this one, it was the third edition, right? And unfortunately, they all the data tables and everything they compiled are missing.
He skipped the country. Somehow got to the
But he remembered all the conclusions.
Yes.
Yeah. So the readers have to recognize that this does not have the database included that we expect from scientific writing, but it was there originally. Yeah. And these are the conclusions. This is the executive summary, basically, and the conclusion. So. It certainly fits with what we know about psychopaths.
Yeah, interesting note on that was Zbigniew Brzezinski somehow got wind of this, and he says, "Oh, this is a great book. I'll help you publish it," and then he suppressed it.
Right.
And without Lobachevsky knowing that he was dead, Lobachevsky figured it out later.
Yeah. Well, that figures.
Where is he? Oh, this book is about me, man. I want that. Me and my buddies.
Yeah. So people are fond of accusing Putin of being a psychopath, but, well, he probably is, but he's a very good one, and thank God he's there to stop us.
He's, all these people, when I see these people, Saddam Hussein, and he's portrayed as this, and everybody just kind of assumes that these people were really, really bad people. And, they were garden variety dictators. If you threaten them, you might have some health problems. But when you don't hear from them in the U.S. press directly, you only hear about them. And I wonder about this guy in North Korea. I have no idea if he does all the stuff that they say he does, because you never hear from him. I wonder if they're covering it up. Are they covering some of it up, all of it up?
That's for another program. I actually deal with that pretty regularly. Okay. Anyway, we're out of time. So thank you very much, Bob. This has been, I think, very useful for the audience, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate it.
Now we're quiet. So we can pretend like we're talking, but... let me smell this thing.
Better than with our backs against the wall. Were we better men than we'd ever been before?